It's the Anfield Wrap. Neil Atkinson, Adam Smith, Ian Salmon, Simon Hughes and Jay McKenna with you for the next about an hour or so, talking about primarily Crystal Palace 2, Liverpool 4. Si Hughes, it's nice to have a solid 2-4 to talk about.
Don't get many. When was the last 4-2 away win?
Honestly, I was thinking about this the other day myself, and I find it quite hard to think of Liverpool's last 4-2 away win. I'm sure someone will be able to correct us quite quickly.
We need Jed Ray, Liverpool's official statistician, to come in with the answer for that.
2-4 is actually quite the rare scoreline. You get more 1-4s than you'd expect.
Correct, yeah.
But I think 2-4 is significantly rare across the football sphere as a whole.
Definitely. I mean, I kind of likened it a little bit to the Cardiff game a few years ago. It felt a little bit like that, which was obviously 6-3.
It did feel a little bit like that.
So there's some kind of maths to that, isn't it?
Well, let's talk about the way in which it felt a little bit like that, because I actually thought of that game afterwards as well. In that game we were 3-1 down, but you always thought we were going to win it.
Yeah.
And we also always kept playing football. And there's that point in the first half where the manager says, he cuts to him on the television, I don't know if you'll have seen it back, but after it goes 2-2, all he's saying and gesturing to them is you can read his lips, he's just saying keep playing football. He's doing the sort of the semi sort of shankly hands of moving round, be the side that you can't live with. And I thought that was the key thing to take from the first half, was Liverpool went out and for 45 minutes putting the errors to one side, they just played football.
Well, I think the big thing about Liverpool at the moment is the attitude and the kind of the methods of recovery into bad situations are really noticeable, more than they have been for the last 3, 4, 5 years even. Little setbacks in-game setbacks, they seem to be able to deal with at the moment, and I think that's a really big thing. It's a big development that. And I think that does come from the manager. He doesn't seem overly bothered by goals going in at the other end. It's all about the reaction to it. And I think that was certainly evident on Saturday. I mean, even though Liverpool looked vulnerable at times, I always kind of just felt that they had the game, they were in control of the game, really, even though, Palace were at one point for about 15-20 minute period, looked like, they could score with pretty much every attack. But, I also thought Liverpool would score with pretty much every attack, and Liverpool would have more attacks. So, I always thought it was going to end up with that kind of result, really. So yeah, I think at the moment the big thing is that Liverpool seems to have a little bit more kind of mental resilience. Something that I've criticised them, I suppose, over the last couple of years. That when things turn the other way and it looks like it's going to go wrong, it invariably has gone wrong. Whereas now they just seem quite confident and comfortable in themselves, the players and the team as a collective, I think.
Ian, it's digging themselves out and digging each other out. I mean, there's no better example than Dejan Lovren slices one up in the air and then 5 minutes later goes up the other end and bullets one in. Yeah. That's your best example. But they're digging each other out as well. I think that's the major thing. The heads aren't going down. There was no frustration at 2-2. It was just, well, that's all right, lads, we'll just score another goal. And even at 2-2, and I'd like to think I'm pretty bullish as a Liverpool supporter, there was something in my head saying, just get the break now, lads, let's just get the half and go from there. And it's that resiliency, which is just the most impressive part. When I'm thinking just get to the break, they're thinking, no, we can score a third.
Yeah, and to be honest, watching it at home on the telly, I was looking at thinking, there's more goals in this half for us. We can do these, because that first 45 minutes I thought were absolutely outstanding. I thought it didn't matter about the mistakes, because the mistakes were going to be compensated for. We seem to have come a very long way in a short period of time from that moment where you can see Mignolet and Moreno burning out James Milner's head on the pitch and him actually bollocking the goalie in front of the entire Kop. That desperation that we reached the periods of the run-in last season, where you could see the mistakes and see that the heads were still going down with this is happening yet again, that's disappeared altogether. That's gone. That's not with us anymore. I'm personally looking forward to the point where somebody scores the first goal against us early on and we put 10 past them just to prove that we can do it. I think it's coming.
Well, there's sort of a point in that, Adam, which is that the first half, despite the fact that Liverpool conceded 2 goals and only going at 3-2, it is a half of absolute dominance.
Yeah, and that's obviously borne out by the fact that I think that they only create one chance and score 2 goals, somehow. We were just so good going forward and pinning them back and just sort of saying, well, if you want to play a low block, if that's what you want to do, if that's what teams think they can do to beat us, well, that's fine. We'll just pin you in place, ping it round you, open up spaces, create chances and score. And, if we'd have gone in sort of with 4 or 5 goals at half time, it wouldn't have been particularly flattering for the attack, which was brilliant. I know, because I had a full-time correct score of 3-2 and had to cash out at half-time because I was shitting myself. And I nearly cashed out 5 minutes before half-time. So that was just how good we were. There was just goals in it every time we went forward.
I think one of the things on this, Jay, is the first half. What I think is interesting is how Palace come out second half. It's still only 3-2, and I wondered if they'd come out the same way at 1-0. Because what they tried to do, and I think we've seen it now at Anfield a couple of times, they tried to do that we're going to sit deep, we're going to keep you at bay, we're just going to hang on for dear life, and we're going to try and make a game of it, maybe last half an hour. And even though they only got in 1 down at half time, it was crystal clear to them, to their manager, that was not a strategy worth employing. That if you do this side's going to absolutely batter you. And that's one of the reasons why they come out second half better. But on the first half, first and foremost, this is the best Liverpool side I can remember. Now, certainly this one on 13-14 by some distance, and then going back years at dealing with lads who just say we're just going to defend the edge of our own box.
I've just wrote the 13-14 thing down there because I think in the past teams have in this season, think to Burnley, think to United, they've sat back against us almost testing, can you break us down? What we are now demonstrating to teams is we can, and we'll do it not just by sheer weight of numbers. Moreno playing on Saturday offered us something different than Milner, and I know it was necessary because of his injury, but that pace down the left-hand side, getting in behind for that goal for Emre Can, Milner wouldn't have done that. That dart and run, it is very reminiscent of 13-14. Not, I think the front three we were a bit more, reliant on in 13-14 with the midfield contributing them. Now it is just so many of the players. Moreno getting forward as he did to pull that back for Emre Can running onto it. It used to annoy me that Liverpool don't score goals like that. Used to watch teams, you'd see goals like that and think, why don't we score goals like that? Why is no one ever running into the box and he tucks it away along the floor? Well, Can did on Saturday because Liverpool just, it wasn't even dominating them. We just outthought them. They came up with a solution. We're going to sit back. Liverpool found a way to get around. The second half, they wanted to do the same thing. Liverpool still found that space for that third goal. Fourth goal, sorry. And we were just cleverer than them, I think, which is as important in it wasn't just sheer weight of numbers and we're so much better. We just outthought them, we were cleverer.
I think as well, the big thing that I see at Liverpool when they overwhelm opponents at the moment, it's they do everything at speed, at high speed. We compare that to the Burnley game. I think we'll be talking about the Burnley game until they lose another game, won't we, unfortunately, but if you compare the speed at which he did things in that game, it was nowhere near what it was like against Crystal Palace, and Jurgen Klopp said about that, after the game, that they weren't, in parts of the game he wasn't happy that they weren't quite direct enough, and that includes the speed element to it, because you've got to do things quickly and get the ball forward quickly. And that's what Liverpool do. Liverpool always looking to pass the ball forward, and that's what frightens teams. And I agree with what Jay said there. You could look at Moreno's performance either way. I think he was, obviously he didn't get to the pitch of Zaha quickly enough, I thought, for the second goal. But that said, he does give the team a lot more width and speed, getting up and down the wing. So,
and it's a great ball for Can.
Yeah, and it's a great ball for Can. So, and he nearly scored himself as well. He did offer a lot, going forward, I thought. It's just his awareness, sometimes he will get punished because his defensive awareness is poor.
We know defensively is bad. Just on that, just you saying there, the way they do it at speed, I wrote it down again, muscle memory. Liverpool aren't doing this on they've scored, now we've got to go and do this. The players are just almost doing what they do in training. When you see the rondo and they're just, they're in a circle and knocking the ball to someone, first touch at pace, Liverpool were doing that in the match. The goal for that Can scores, if that goes to Milner, or if that's against Burnley, there's every chance that he takes a touch there. There's every chance that Moreno takes a touch more than he needs to. Instead, he gets it back into the box as soon as he can. Can gets to run on that gives you the half a yard on the team.
And this is really interesting in the idea that it's muscle memory, but it's also speed of thought. Because one of the things I took from it was, and again, it was. I think I'd like to think it was a good one to watch on television, partially because I'm probably jealous to everyone who went down for it, because I didn't go to this one. But I do think it was a good one to watch on television, because one of the things I was watching, you're seeing close-ups of lads like Scott Dan, Martin Kelly and Johan Kabay, and these are good footballers. You know, these are footballers who've got a fair bit of experience,
and they're blowing chunks in the first half.
They're shattered and they're confused, and that's what it was like. They didn't know where's it going to come from next, because Liverpool just played in all the gaps around them as well in that first half period when they were really good.
Yeah, I think we're going to look back and we're going to talk about the Burnley game. I'm going to talk about the Burnley game again. We're going to look back at the Burnley game and think it's the biggest favour anybody could have ever done us, because I think it's been the making of us in terms of how we cycle around and we take on a defence that's going to sit. And now that we've done it so many times, people will look at that actual defence, look at that attack and go, we can't just sit. They go and get their idea instead that they can't just sit. I also think that, once again, Burnley, we missed Milner. Now, Moreno's had 6 weeks of watching Milner play, and Moreno played much more of a Milner game on Saturday than he did his own game. I thought he was a lot more effective than he's been for a long while. He was a lot more measured and he was getting back a little bit more than he normally does. But he also, it's a very valid point that Jay was making. Against Burnley, he takes a touch. Milner takes a touch. Other players take a touch. But what he does there, it's a cushioned, side-footed volley into the box. And it's a lovely ball that he plays.
Yeah.
It's one of the most intelligent balls he's played at any point in his career in Liverpool. So we've got a point where we've had Burnley teach us what we did wrong in terms of the desperation that we put into that game, and we've learned that we don't need desperation anymore, because if we do just keep playing football, we will break them down. And if we do move the front three round, and even when Sturridge comes back in, you can look at Sturridge and go, well, Sturridge can now do that job because he's watched that job happen. We can actually go for the diamond with Sturridge and Origi. We've seen these things happen now. We know that we've got the options and we've got the alternatives, and they've learned the options and alternatives on the run because they've had to reply to that one game. It's what United did to an extent. We are going to look back at that, and I think that's going to be the making of the rest of the season, and the way Hull was making the 13-14.
Adam, you said before, Crystal Palace creates one chance, score 2 goals. Do you think, therefore, as we begin to sort of think about the second half, that effectively, as I say, they look at it and go, do you know what, lads, there's no point us just waiting to sit in and get picked off. Instead, we've got to go with these. That's our only chance to try to get to play the game in their half a lot more. Do you think do you think that's a deliberate thing that they're thinking second half? Because I think if it is, it's an interesting thing, because in general, if sides start to have that attitude about playing us, which is, well, we can't sit in because they're going to pick us off, then if they're going to try and play football themselves, then the idea that we can press them and force them back and nick it off them and then go and create ourselves comes into play. This is what I'm sort of trying to drive at here, is that it's very difficult now to sort of work out how you set a team up against this Liverpool side.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting, especially with the 13-14 comparisons, is the reason I'm so excited this year is because I think we're much better defensively than we were 13-14. I think 13-14 we were cut open at will quite a lot because we committed so many men forward. That isn't really happening, and now. And the Palace game,
that's partially because people haven't decided we'll just attack them yet.
Yeah, obviously to a degree, but again, of course, the flip side of that is the reason they've decided we're not going to attack them yet is because they've seen what we're doing going forward, and that's comes back to your point: is what do we do? What do we possibly do? And I think it's also an interesting part of ties in with what you were talking about before with the mental resilience, that these defenders who have conceded every game except one are still quite happy to go, bring it on if you want to attack us, because we can defend fine as well. It's quite where previously I think they would maybe panic a bit when they came under pressure. It feels like they're doing that less now, because they aren't allowing loads of chances. We aren't being cut open at will. And as soon as we cut out perhaps the individual errors and start dealing with set pieces, then it becomes even harder and teams have even less opportunity to do anything.
Yeah, just on that theme, I suppose it might be an obvious thing to say, but 13-14, the threat was obvious, from Liverpool's point of view. Suarez, Sturridge, and Coutinho to a lesser extent that season. Whereas this season, the threat, it's a bit subtler. It's just like Liverpool just seemed like a really decent team, and Jurgen Klopp's kind of moulded a front line which tactically knows its responsibilities, and is allowed to just play free. And I think obviously Man United have come to Anfield and defended as a block, but I don't think Liverpool particularly played well. There are occasions when Liverpool just might not play that well. They just come back from international break. I think that game is always a bit iffy after they come back from international break. You can win 4-0, you can lose a game that you might be expected to win, you might play poorly. Whereas if that game was in a couple of weeks' time, it might be slightly different, I think. So I think that's a big thing this season, that because Liverpool doesn't really have one outstanding star quality player, that people might say Coutinho is. I think the last 2 games he's been absolutely fantastic. And if he carries on playing like that for the rest of the season, he'll probably, he's got a good chance of being the star player of the Premier League this season. But Liverpool this season, I just think teams haven't quite figured them out because they don't know where the threat is, because the threat's everywhere. Almost.
Well, that's what I was about to say. It helps that people have scored. I think the thing with the Chan goal the other day was it's a bit like, how's he scored now? Now he's there, Lallana's there.
It's like Firmino, isn't it? I mean, I still see Firmino as quite a mysterious character because there's. Sometimes you're thinking, he's nearly lost the ball, but then he gets himself into a great position where he scored. There are moments where he's doing a lot of running, but not necessarily maybe doing as much with the ball. But then he'll score. He's got quite. If you underestimate him, I think you'll find yourself 1-0 down or 4-2 down.
Well, I think that's why in a way they offered him that space for that fourth goal. Their centre backs are thinking he's not going to split us here. He hasn't got the pace to get through, and he has. He gets through. He's through the middle and he takes his chance. And Liverpool have thought that, haven't they? They're going to afford him that space. That's why we're a bit more intelligent. They're going to afford him that space because they're defenders. Henderson gets the ball, and there are 2 or 3 Liverpool players he can pass to when he gets the pass, when he's about to play the pass. Their instinct is to shift left slightly. They think he's going wide. All they do is think he's going wide, and he goes straight down the middle. And they're not expecting Firmino to do that. They're not expecting Liverpool to trust in Firmino. They're not expecting that he's going to make that run because they're thinking he's not the striker who's playing off the shoulder. They're thinking he's going to wait for it to go wide and then a diagonal passing behind.
He's pretty much not even making a run at that point. He's pretty much static, and there's a fantastic run from Adam Lallana because basically, I think if I remember rightly, the left back has stepped up a little bit.
He's following Mane. Mane comes out with the ball, pops it off to Henderson,
and then Lallana takes the other centre back out wide to the left, and all of a sudden you've got that massive hole, and Firmino's basically just been wandering around slowly looking for it, and he knows exactly where he wants it, and he's pointing to where he wants it on a plate. Everybody on the pitch behind him can see exactly what he wants, and it's brilliant thought.
I think Jay just obviously mentioned Henderson's role there. I think his kind of performances over the last 2 months have been a big thing for Liverpool. I didn't actually see the entire game on Saturday. I watched it again on Sunday, and I was reading some of the match reports as well. And I think the Sunday Times, captured Henderson perfectly. They said he wasn't a captain; he was like an admiral. You could see him, hear him as well, guiding the team, telling players where to be. He was a voice within the team, and he's really stepped up a few levels in that position the last couple of months. And it's not always exactly obvious what he's doing because it's a slightly subtler role, but I just see his leadership the last couple of months has been fantastic.
Do you think an element that is, and I think it is, by the way, so I'm slightly leading you a little bit, but is an element of that the idea that because he's playing well, you're more secure to do all the other stuff as well, to do the stuff that you're talking about there, the shouting, the organising. If you're sort of able to strut around and be aware of the fact that you're at 90% all the time, you're always at close to your 9 out of 10 game, whatever anyone else gives that. You think of every level of football. If you're confident in your performance, Si, as you're playing, you do feel better in terms of saying to people, you do more of this, you do more of this, you do more of this. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, that's the big challenge, isn't it? I suppose when you're not playing well and telling people what to do, then it's a different game, really. And I suppose there might be periods in the season where that that'll be interesting to see how that happens. But I just think, I don't know, the way he's speaking as well in the media, the way the way he's conducting himself, the way he's running almost, he's just running with a bit more authority. He just seems like he's in control of that whole area of the pitch at the moment, and I don't think that can be underestimated, just how, within the framework of that Liverpool team, the way it attacks, having that person who's directing from that position, I think it's really important.
It's another position the Klopp's reinvented, basically, isn't it? It's not a defensive midfielder. It's not the old quarterback role. He's not necessarily conducting in the way that Gerrard would have conducted with 60-yard balls. He's conducting with sheer presence and with communication.
It goes back to before we were talking about playing direct and quick. He's recycling the ball really quickly, getting it, giving it, just making it easy for the players to play.
Okay, opening question before we get back into the game comes from John Rogers. It's not too opening anymore, John, but I'm sure you understand. Everyone's having a nice chat. John's question is this: if you could have complete telepathic command over one species of animal, individually or in number, which would it be? So if you got to have complete telepathic command over one species of animal, individually or in number, which would it be? Ian Salmon.
Cats on every possible level.
So
as a group,
all felines,
all felines. Well, it's just house cats to me, because as a number, they'd be an incredible army for you. They're vicious little bastards when they want to be, and specifically, mine keeps sleeping on the skybox. And every time he moves around, he presses rewind, and it's absolutely doing my head in. So, yeah, cats.
Simon Hughes.
Him especially.
Ian is basically happy with just one cat. He's compromised this down.
Mine.
Simon.
Crocodiles or alligators?
Really?
Yeah.
You'd have to be near them, though. There's not loads of them about.
Yeah, I know, but they're just terrifying. I just find them really terrifying. Though they've got so much history with the world. I think they'd be able to figure it all out.
Okay. Crocodiles or alligators, Jay McKenna?
Elephants.
Really?
Yeah.
What are you doing with them?
Don't know, yeah.
You've got all these elephants.
I know. Do loads of things with them, can they? The boss elephants.
I'm banging into them.
Love elephants.
I'm banging into them, but there's not many of them round ours.
I was as excited that Planet Earth 2's coming out on telly as I was probably about Liverpool on Saturday, really.
Okay.
It was really good.
Okay, Adam.
Elephants.
Well, I'm an exceptionally lazy person, so my instinct is to say monkeys to train them to do everything.
Well, you won't have to train them, you just got complete command.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean. Yeah, just command them to do whatever I want. But following Ian theme slightly, I can't even make my dog stop barking, so I'd have to take that just because it does me head in.
What dog have you got?
It's a Jack Russell Poodle cross.
You're never going to stop a Jack
friggin'
Russell.
nightmares. Exactly, that's why I need command over him.
Hold on, what's a Jack Russell Poodle cross look like?
Well, weird.
Like a Jack Russell.
Yeah.
Jack Russell with an afro.
A tiny narc. Dennis Wise. Okay, going into the second half, Dennis. We've got.
What's your answer, Neil?
My answer's bees.
All right, that's very well.
Are they actually animals?
If they count, I'll have bees, please, because there's tons of them. You've got 6 eyes, you can see all sorts, and they'd be little emissaries for me all over the world.
And there's lots of them as well.
And they make honey. And they're a great set of lads.
See, but this why elephants. No one would mess with an elephant.
No one will mess with an elephant, but I want to know what you're doing when I've surrounded you with 400 bees, lad. Anyway,
you're only going to take 400 bees.
400 bee stings would do for you.
I reckon all my elephants in the world will win.
I think 400 bees.
This should be a Badness Phil show.
I'm just killing you, Jay, with 400 bees, and you're no longer controlling the elephants. All right then. Can't believe it got nasty that quickly. There's got to be beef over something. I want to talk about the second 90. Really, I'll start actually with you, Jay, on this one. I thought that they did have us pinned back there for 15-20 minutes. I don't know. In fact, no, I don't actually know the answer to this. I was about to say I don't know if we managed the game well or not, because Simon said before that you always felt as though Liverpool could go forward and make something happen on the one hand, but on the other hand, we didn't necessarily relieve the pressure maybe quite as well as the manager would like at times.
No, my memory of the second half is a bit more hazy than the first, because we were incredibly pissed and we were rubbing it into a load of United fans who were watching the match.
He's right.
With, but I got the sense watching it, and thinking back to that, is that Liverpool just knew they'd done enough. Liverpool knew they were better, and I don't think it was managing the game, as you say. I don't think it was like, let's see what they offer. Yeah, it was. We weren't. Liverpool didn't have a conversation at half time, and the manager says, right, stop doing this, stop doing that. Let's see what Palace have got after they're at home. They've got to come out. They've got to try and get a result. They scored 2 goals. They'd have probably thought that was enough. Their fans are probably thinking this is Liverpool again, who, we're their bogey side. We can't keep scoring against them. Let's see what they offer before we react. And I suspect he's probably said to them, if they do this, you do that. If they do Y, you do Z. And as it was, I don't think they really did. I think their problem is what we said before. The players might have got an instruction at half time. Thinking of the Palace players, they've gone in. Scott Dan, who's bollocked that, is it MacArthur, who scores the goals for them, who loses them. He loses the man, doesn't he, for the first goal? He's bollocked him, and then he's had a nightmare himself against Batty. So he's probably thinking, right, he's gone around bollocking everyone as captain, and then doesn't do it himself. So he's listened to the manager at half time, and he's gone back out on the pitch second half. And I'm thinking, if I'm in Scott Dan's head, I can't tell these players what to do, because none of us can fucking do it, because we don't know what Liverpool are going to do. So they've probably come out, the players, with an instruction from Pardew and haven't been able to execute it because they're not sure what to expect. And similarly, Liverpool have been waiting for Palace to do something, and they haven't really done it, and we've just been able to coast through a bit more.
Is it a feeling here that the goal comes at the right time, the fourth? It's a great goal, and I say I could just talk about it for the whole show, but I've got to not do that. But is there a feeling there with you, Adam, that the goals come at the right time there in order to kill it? Because to me, I felt like Palace sort of looked at the size of the hill at that point and went, we can't climb that, boys, we're shattered here.
Yeah, and I think we knew it as well. I think the players knew that. I think that was it. Kind of, it felt a little bit like, right, that's it. Let's just knock it on the head now and call it a day. It felt like they didn't They did have that 15-minute or so spell, as you say, where they were dominant, but they didn't really get anything from it, and then they were getting wound up by the ref not giving them pens that weren't pens, and all that sort of was all rolled into itself. And then I think when we scored, that just kind of killed it. And if we hadn't scored then, and we had another 10 minutes of pressure or so, maybe they'd have got something, and then it might have been tricky for us to find a winner. But it came at the right time, and it came in the perfect way as well. Just that kind of really kill,
like a goal that counts for two.
Absolutely, where it just sort of humiliated them a little bit, really, and was just brilliant. And obviously Firmino got his top off and showed his amazing teeth.
I thought he was going to say something else as well. Ian, I'm slightly surprised that both Adam and Jay are sort of talking Palace down a little bit. I thought Palace played quite well. I'll even say that across the 90. I just thought that firstly, that's testament to how good Liverpool were first 45, and secondly, I thought that they did rally, they did carry a threat. Yes, it's a slightly agricultural threat, and it revolves around the fact that Christian Benteke is indeed really good as a centre forward, but I thought that they did carry a little bit of a threat, and that's why I think Liverpool's performance there, they haven't beaten the bad Crystal Palace, because we know there's the bad Crystal Palace and there's the good Crystal Palace and there's the average Crystal Palace. I'd actually argue they're beating the good Crystal Palace there. Ian, I don't know what you think.
I completely agree. I thought watching the second half, I was slightly disappointed in the second half as a spectacle, because the first half had been so glorious that when we came on for the second, and all of a sudden we're kind of sitting back. I'm intrigued as to whether, I'm intrigued as to whether Klopp has told them to go out and manage the game a little bit as a test to see whether they can manage the game, or if we've just been penned back, because for about 20 minutes we don't necessarily manage it, we just cope with it. And we do enough to cope with it, but Crystal Palace were far more worrying than I would have expected them to be in that position. The fourth goal, it comes at exactly the moment, in exactly the right way, because it is very much, look what we can do when we decide to do it. We can do this to you. It doesn't matter what you do, because we will do this to you. But we did. We beat a good Crystal Palace side who played well in the second half. And it's also, I think it's noticeable what you're saying about Benteke. Benteke is influential in both their goals. He's there. He's the nod on for that first long ball. He's the guy who nods it across for the cross to come back in. He is influential, and he does play that role very well, which we saw him play before we bought him, and we didn't use him to do. So they were a decent side playing decent football. Zaha looked threatening at times. I'm amazed he didn't get booked for either of those dives, but he looked threatening.
I think ultimately Liverpool are going to find it very hard to play. I know they played for pretty much 45 minutes, just relentless, going forward, streaming forward all the time. It's virtually impossible to do that for 90 minutes. There will be games when Liverpool, play exactly the same way and score 4, and the other team don't score, and then the game's dead. It's just obviously Crystal Palace scored 2 in that time, and Crystal Palace are a good team and have the potential to score 2. So, yeah, I think, as Ian kind of said a bit earlier on, sooner or later there might be a game where Liverpool, score 7 or 8 against, a pretty decent side. It was quite interesting listening to Pardew after the game, because he you can usually tell when he's annoyed with the way his team have played, and you seem pretty satisfied with it. But ultimately, when you come up against an opponent who blows you away like Liverpool did in an attacking sense, it becomes very difficult.
Can I ask you about this? Because you've spoken to many more footballers and many more football managers than me, and so the idea here of 5:30 Saturday, you're on the telly, everyone can see you, every other set of supporters can see you. Do you think there's such a thing, there's a statement of intent performance that, for instance, if you're Guardiola, if you're Wenger, you know that your side's played first and won, scored 4 away from home. If you're Guardiola, you're thinking we put 4 in the back of the net against West Brom. Is there something that begins to get in people's heads when they're then and at these other clubs, and the players, because the players all watch football, they're not thick. Are they then watching that and going, Christ, these are good?
Well, it might be slightly different under Klopp. I mean, most of the previous Liverpool managers, I think, that have encountered, kind of wanted the players the pressure to be taken away, and to be quite relaxed, but to know exactly what the manager expected of them before the game. Whereas we haven't quite got into that so much. I mean, some of the players, when you speak about Klopp, they say that I don't think he really winds them up that much. This idea that he's
an aggressive man manager in the dressing room. Yeah,
I think he knows when to kind of to stop a little bit, and he doesn't seem like the type of person to me who would want to put pressure on his players to kind of perform.
But do you think though, when Liverpool perform like that, what I mean is going out to the rest of the league, is that everyone's now looking and thinking about that? God, these are good.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely, because you know, it's all about time, isn't it? You know, if you're setting the agenda on a Saturday night and everybody's going into the Saturday night forgetting about what's happened at 3 o'clock, you know, or earlier on in the day, and it's the game that gets talked about. The only weird thing is that, you know, if it carries on into Sunday now, you know, Sky haven't got the 5:30 kick-off, you know, TV right, so actually it feels like that the kind of the impact of that game, because we haven't seen it on Goals on Sunday and it hasn't been talked about as much on Sky. It doesn't seem maybe has the impact that it might do if it was a Sky game. I know it's a bit weird to say that, but I think people, you know, the exposure that it has. Not everybody has BT Sport, do they?
On Snapchat, on Snapchat they have a Sky Sports bit, and theirs was It was Aguero on fire, and Premier League reaction.
Yeah.
Not about Liverpool, not about, you know, Liverpool winning 4-2 on a tea time kick off on a Saturday. You'd expect most people.
I think in the newspapers it certainly does. In the papers it does, but on the TV it might not have quite the you know, the impact.
Okay, I'm going to do front to back rather than back to front. I'm going to do front to back because often what you end up doing is rushing through the attackers, and it's a bit of a shame. And certainly when they played as well as they have, and it's difficult. It's interesting. What I found interesting is the number of people saying how good Coutinho was. I thought Coutinho was really, really good, but I also thought Mane was marvellous, and Firmino scores the best goal of the football match.
Yeah.
So. I thought Mane should score, and I think that's perhaps one of the reasons why he gets a little bit of a black mark against his name on this one, because he really should stick the ball in the back of the net from 8 yards out when it gets squared to him.
He should score 2 or 3.
Yeah, he gets another opportunity in there as well. But that said, I'll start with Mane, but sort of a combination of all three of them and Lallana, how they link up in. I just thought Mane was absolutely marvellous.
Yeah, his movement, he can be incredible without having that dynamic Arsenal moment which makes him stand out. He doesn't need that every week, and he can still put in that shift and still be as influential. But I do think, I see where you're coming from. It's very hard to separate that three any longer. And listening to the Pink earlier on, I think it's very apt to go, well, you couldn't actually pick a real man of the match. Obviously we're giving Coutinho man of the match. Everyone's giving him that as a stand-up player, but it wasn't a game where there was a man of the match who stood out towering over everybody else, because everybody was functioning at the same level. I think it was also a fact that you could look at it and go, well, we could make 2 or 3 changes here without damaging the team, and you could substitute anybody and it wouldn't be a reflection on how they played, it would be purely tactical. You've got a moment where we are playing so much as a unit now. It's like the 13-14 side was so much about big characters. This is so much about the system and the units and the tactics now. I think it's hard to split those three, but you know, the three were equally excellent and in different ways. Mane spent a lot of time playing as a centre-forward, and possibly more as a centre-forward than he's done in any other game. He did drag into the middle a hell of a lot, and he's a constant threat.
I think I think what's fascinating, Si, is I'm not going to say I expected the Arsenal goal. I don't think I did expect the Arsenal goal, and certainly not on that occasion, on that game. But the advanced press we had on Mane was, he'll be inconsistent for you. There's some games where he's downright unplayable, and apart from that, you're not going to see that much of him. I can't believe how consistent he's been. I think practically every game this season, he's at least delivered a 7 out of 10. I don't think there's one game where you'd turn around and felt like anyone was carrying him in this one. He's at least done his job, occupied people, kept busy, and this game's no exception. It is him, for instance, who drops in, creates the space for Lallana to fill, for Firmino to fill and put it in the back of the net, as an example.
He's got everything, and I know there's been a lot of talk about the pace that he's got on it. Certainly he's given Liverpool something that they probably haven't had since maybe Michael Owen. You know, that level of absolute raw pace, you know, that just can destroy the opposition. You know, he turns bad passes into good passes because of that pace. But not only that, you know, he surprised me with his movements. You know, he picks up great spaces. You know, his use of the ball is very good. You know, I've been really, I mean, I'm just repeating what you said. I've just been totally surprised by the levels that he's hit almost instantly. And it's what I do like about him is he's got a little bit, I know we've spoken about this I think on the shows before, but he does have a little bit of nasty about him as well. He looks like a bit of a narc, you know, and I think Liverpool fans are bought into that. You know, you know, he's got a bit of a face on him when things don't go right, and he tries to put it right. So yeah, I thought again on Saturday he was, you know, as Ian said, he could have picked several players, really.
We weren't over the line on those forward players to win us the match, because obviously, you know, we scored the goals that we had, but this is one of the things I've always noted, and this is less about them because it's a player, but it's one of the things I always noted about the likes of Fowler, Owen, Suarez, Torres. They didn't score goals when Liverpool were already winning. They didn't use the goals up when Liverpool were winning 4-2. You know, they didn't score a hat-trick to make it 7-2 kind of thing. They scored goals when Liverpool needed them to score goals. You know, so that's a good thing for us. You know you can rely on them. The goals that you're going to get from Mane are going to come in another game when you're going to need them. I think the thing you said about Mane then, it made me think of Wijnaldum as well, because the same got said about him. You know, he's going to look good for you in some games, but
only plays at home.
Don't quite see him. Not quite sure why you signed that amount of money for him. Is he better than Joe Allen and all this stuff? Well, he's around better players, so I suspect the manager's seen something in him that says, you know that inconsistency. We're going to train that area, and you're going to get rid of that inconsistency, because those passes you were playing where you were drifting out of the game and you weren't scoring them wonder goals, you know, and you would have just been ticking over. You were trying to tick over in the Southampton side, and the lads just weren't on the same wavelength as you. Whereas now he is. Wijnaldum the same. He's got better players around him, and this is the thing that's missing from a Liverpool that goes and does well. We had done it when we signed Alonso. We signed a really good player who then become a really consistent, really good player. That's what Liverpool need, and Mane's doing that now. As you say, the 7 out of 10s.
Yeah, I also think that football is, like, fans talk about it as if it's such a black and white thing as well, and that's where the kind of, you know, the Mane inconsistency thing comes from. If he doesn't score, then for some fans he's not done well enough and he's not played. But you can see it in the game, and you know, I mean, I agree with Ian. Like, he could have had 2 or 3, and probably, you know, definitely should have had 1. But, you know, probably could have, you know, even had a hat trick on his day. But he was still brilliant even without that. Even without scoring those goals, he was still brilliant, still pulling people around, and you can see what he's doing. And when you've got an attack that is so good at rotating around itself and people moving into different positions and creating space for each other, that's where a player can look brilliant even without scoring or doing anything, because they are still dragging defenders out of position. That really helps.
Moving to Ian. Moving to Coutinho and Firmino, I thought Coutinho, what you mentioned there, Mane filling in centre forward, Firmino moving around. I actually thought it was, whilst he's been in that front three, I actually thought first half was the deepest we've seen Coutinho start from. He was a bit more midfieldy than he was front three, I felt at times. Yeah,
he was dropping a lot deeper and conducting things, and I think that again that's part of the flexibility that we offer, that we can make that movement because you know people are going to fill in for you, and it's. He's in one of those very good moments at the moment, Phil Coutinho, isn't he? He's looking like a player who knows exactly what he can do, and he's got the players, once again, he's got the players around him that accommodate him doing that, so that there's always a ball for him to play, and he's always willing to work as well. I think we've seen it already, that link between Coutinho and Firmino that we saw coming through at times last season. It seems to be a given now. It seems to be that the two of them will be on the same wavelength all the time. There's not that lack of consistency. We're seeing it happen in glimpses last season. I think this season you can see that it's going to happen every single game. The two of them are going to combine, and they're combining brilliantly. I think we've got possibly the second best front three in world football at the moment. The first front three is probably quite a bit ahead of them, but we've got the second best world front three in world football at the moment.
It feels like a massive shout, but it could well be true. It could well be true, actually, when you stop to think about it for a minute. It's hard to it's hard to come up with anything better to say. On the other two, then, on Coutinho, I thought he was absolutely terrific, and I just think it suits him. I like to see him a bit deeper. I think he still influences the game so much. He's still going to deliver you those numbers that he does. I think he's really coming into his own. Yeah,
he's. I know Carrot did a column, didn't he, about, you know, he used to think that when Barcelona and Real Madrid were linked to them and they were like, no chance, but you know that could happen. I mean, I think the last 2 weeks he had quite a poor game against United, didn't he? I thought, as did every Liverpool player really. Not poor, but you know, could have performed better. I thought on Saturday night he was just, you know, a couple of levels above most of the other players on the pitch. He was probably the. I know we're talking about a really good Liverpool performance, but you still need one player, I think, to kind of be the reference point for the team, and he was the one that always looking to be involved in the game. He was involved in everything that Liverpool did well and did brilliantly. I mean, if he continues playing like that throughout the course of the season, he's probably going to be, you know, a big difference in some of the big key games. And I do think Liverpool need that. I think for Liverpool to win the league this year, I think he's going to have to be, you know, influential, as he was.
he's going to be that big player, Adam, and I think he was. I think there is an onus on both him and Firmino. Before, when Jay mentioned about scoring key goals, I mean, there's the two key goals in a football match are the goal that puts you one goal ahead and the goal that puts you 2 goals ahead. And Firmino delivers that goal, that finish, and knows it himself, and that's one of the reasons why he takes his top off. But between him and Coutinho, they both put a big performance in on Saturday night. That's the key thing. We can say, well, it's not. You can talk about whether or not it's a big game, but it was a big atmosphere, and it's a big game for Crystal Palace, and they were they made all the difference.
Yeah, it was interesting because in the West Brom game, I remember at Anfield, I remember thinking that I was a bit disappointed with Coutinho. I sort of felt like he was not really in the game much. And then when I got home and re-watched it, I thought that's mental. Have I not seen how good he was? And it, watching him and so I kind of this week deliberately concentrated on him because I didn't want to look a fool again, so I'd sort of watched him closer, and just some of the stuff that he does, and the thing is that he's going to do it as well. That's like I mean, maybe it's obviously different when you're up close with him, but he just drops his shoulder and he's gone past 3 people and there's nothing they can do about it, even though he's done it time and time again. They know it's going to come, and Firmino's work rate just means that they just can't. He just never stops, and that must be so irritating when he's got the skill and he's got the touch and he's got the vision, and he never stops. He's just, I mean, I think Firmino is brilliant, and it's so interesting that maybe 12 months ago there were still a few people sort of saying, I don't really know what he does, I'm not sure what he adds to the team, and all that kind of thing.
12 months ago, even 6 months ago, understandably as well.
Well, exactly, like totally, because because the team wasn't necessarily set up maybe to get the most out of him and all of that kind of thing. And now not a game goes by where he's not somebody that we're talking about in really glowing terms, and you feel like if the pair of them can keep the fitness up for the full season, then we really will be a force to be reckoned with, because they're just so good. And I don't necessarily think there's anyone right now in the league who's playing as well and as consistently as them. Aguero's obviously a phenomenal player, but he was dropped for a game. He hasn't scored in a few, all that sort of stuff. Whereas the two of them are just every single game they're doing something brilliant.
Yeah, I was annoyed by his brace at the weekend. Actually, I was one of them where I was enjoying the out of form Aguero. Can we have him back, please? Keep that sort of thing up. Into midfield, I want to talk about chance separately to both Henderson and Lallana, Ian. Lallana, it's an interesting game from him in that, again, he doesn't necessarily directly influence that much. I don't even think he creates that many chances in the grand scheme of things, but like Firmino does in the front three, he's constantly knitting things up for Liverpool. Yeah,
I think it was one of his quieter games. He was just effective. He did nothing wrong, did nothing that was particularly stunning, his closing down wasn't as aggressive as it's been in other weeks, but he does just keep rotating, he keeps moving the ball on. And I think to an extent, to cover Chan a little bit at the same time, I know we'll come back to him, but I think Lallana was doing a lot of the Wijnaldum role as well, because there's a lot of transitional balls there, so the stuff Wijnaldum would do that Chan doesn't necessarily do, because he's not the same kind of player, he's a much more physical player. Lallana was doing that as well, so I think he was just a much more of a carrier, possibly. Let's go with the pejorative term. He was the water carrier for that day, and he was doing the unglamorous role, and he was doing it very, very well. So he was a player that you wouldn't necessarily notice the work rate of, you wouldn't necessarily notice him standing out, but if you'd have taken him out of that team on Saturday night, it would have been a different team.
If you'd have taken him out of that team, I think that's the current Lallana thing, in that you don't want to take him out of that team, and I think that he is pulling them together and giving them shape and giving them options and just giving them movement. He's occupying.
He takes a lot of responsibility for the position that he plays in, which needs responsibility. I mean, I kind of a bit similar to Adam in the sense, he's talking about Coutinho. Like during the game, I thought it was a bit of a quieter game, but when you actually look at, I suppose, the highlights and the chances Liverpool created, Lallana's pass was often the second, not the first pass, because that was usually Henderson, but the second pass. His passing was really quite sharp and expansive at times. I thought, you don't often see, Lallana playing kind of 20-yard passes, but there seemed to me anyway to be quite a lot of those types of passes, releasing Moreno or, getting the ball into Coutinho. So, just kind of backing up what Ian said, really, I think he was involved in a lot of that type of build-up play. you know, and it showed a slightly different side to his game that maybe Liverpool fans haven't seen quite as much of.
It's a sign of how good, you mentioned it before, Firmino, but it's a sign of how good he's become for Liverpool and how much more important he's become. You know, the word doubts, I've questioned him in the past and stuff like that, what he does. But he's had a quieter game there, and we're almost picking up on it. Not because he's necessarily been worse, but because he's just been quieter in comparison to
everybody can't be explosive all the time, can they? Ultimately, you know.
No, that's his thing, and we haven't seen that same thing from him. So we're almost questioning and asking why. And it was just that it just wasn't that day for him. He was doing a different role, different players. Wasn't his day. We'd scored the goals already. You know, if we're getting beat 2-1 or it's 1-1. I think you see a different Lallana. I think you see something different from the rest of the players.
Okay, we've touched on Henderson, and I'm more than happy not to go back there as we are becoming increasingly sort of pushed for time. So Emre Can, Jay, he's, from looking off the pace against United, I thought he was improved against West Brom. I think it still doesn't look quite. He doesn't look quite where he looked himself last season. I think it's fair to say, and he's had a fair bit of time on the pitch by now, but he's improving all the time.
He is, and Emre Can strikes me in the games he's played is he gets frustrated by that. It's like he knows in himself that he's not as fit. Also because he knows he's got to take the opportunity. He knows Wijnaldum's getting back to fitness now, and he doesn't want Wijnaldum to come in for him because he's had a poor game, and so he's striving for that. But then, as you say, against Tottenham as well, he gets annoyed by things. He did play against Tottenham, didn't he? I'm not imagining that. I'm at the moment now, doubting that he played.
He didn't play against Tottenham, no?
No, he didn't. West Brom, I'm sort of thinking about.
Yeah, you think about West Brom.
He gets annoyed and he gets a cobbon and he argues with other players. He's having, things telling them what to do. And I think his thing there, he done it when he come on against Tottenham. He's telling other players what to do. And it's like yourself, you're not quite there yourself, so you want to show your worth on the pitch. And I think, it's a pity for him because he is one of those players that, give him a few games under his belt, and he is back in and he's playing fine and he's playing like he's been there all that time. I think he'll be feeling the pressure that Wijnaldum could easily come back in and Emre Can could be sitting on the bench for the next 6 games.
That's an interesting point of view, that one, Ian, that I think, broadly speaking, across the board, the competition for places Liverpool have currently got fantastic. I think you can probably imagine it in training. Everyone's buzzing, but maybe Emre is the man who doesn't know. He doesn't know if he's going to play against Watford. I think if you're Coutinho, Firmino and Mane, even if you're Coutinho, you think you might get dropped back into midfield if the manager chose to go with Sturridge, for instance. That's fine, but you're going to play against Watford. Whereas if there's a footballer on the pitch at the moment who doesn't know he's going to play against Watford, of all those lads who started that game, there's Moreno, but he knows what his lot is, and then there's Emre Can.
Yeah, I think if you're Emre Can, you've got to look at it and realise that what Can gives us is he's given us great physicality, but he's also, I don't necessarily mean this in a bad way, although it's going to sound it, he's a more ragged player than Wijnaldum. He's more likely to try something where he may try and burst through two or three men, and it's either going to be incredible or the ball's going to go 30 yards away from him, and it's going to be one or the other. With Wijnaldum, he's not going to try that. He's not going to try that sudden burst through. He's not going to give you the aggression and the physicality, but he will keep hold of the ball for you, and he will transition into another player. And I think Wijnaldum fits the makeup of this team better at the moment. So again, I'll caveat it with, like I did with Sturridge last week on one of the shows, I'll caveat it with at the moment he fits it better than Can does. But that doesn't mean that in 3 weeks' time Can won't look better in the right hand side than Lallana does. We've got the best squad in the country. You could say technically City might have more threat in their first 11 than us, and I'm not even sure they do anymore. I think they have more threat with Aguero, and Aguero's the one player in the country that I'm actually scared of. But in terms of a squad, we're not just a 15-16 anymore. In 13-14 we were practically just a 12. We're not even a 15-16. We are basically a 20-man squad who, as was said on the Pink again, you could slot anybody in. As we said after the Spurs game, you could slot anybody who started against Spurs into this team and they would not be out of place. I think, though, in terms of the first choice 11, I think Wijnaldum edged ahead of Can, but that may not be the case all the way through.
Adam? It was interesting. In the 10 from the Terrace WhatsApp group, somebody said, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said that he thought Can was looking a little bit off the pace, and I said I actually thought he was looking a little bit chunky, and that was like 10 seconds before he scored. So in our faces, and
the most,
yeah, exactly.
And you and I are both also looking a little bit chunky.
Well, that's why I get to judge. And but it was one of them where you sort of watching, thinking, well, I still think he does at the moment when he's not quite up to speed. I still think he does take the pace out of the game a little bit.
We'll keep going.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to ask something about that. I still think he does take the pace out of the game a little bit, which doesn't mean that he can't do something brilliant like score, or like in the game where he's sort of an integral part of the goal against West Brom, isn't he? Things like he's still going to do things like that, but I do think I don't think that Wijnaldum. I think Wijnaldum is better at that fast turnover of the ball than he is. As a natural thing, but I do think he offers something against those bigger, more physical teams.
Professional Emre Can agnostic Simon Hughes. The one thing I would say about him is that he did, well, not the one thing I'd say a number of nice things about him off the back of the performance against Palace, but I am intrigued by what Jay says, because the one thing I would have thought which would settle him a little bit is a goal. He opens the scoring, if you know what I mean, and it didn't seem to quite settle him in the same way that maybe it is just as simple as the security aspect that Jay's talking about, and yet the goals are one of the things he does need to add to his game. So he should rightly be praised for that. He is attacking the box. He's coming in from deep.
I mean, I think that's. When he does play, that's what he in that position, because it's quite clear at the moment that obviously Henderson is the first choice in the kind of the holding role, although obviously he's not quite doing a holding job, I suppose. And Henderson's captain, that means that Can isn't going to play as many games in that position as he probably likes. So when he does play in the other role, like the left or the right, he's going to have to bomb forward and contribute more in terms of assists or goals. Now, so I think that's in the back. That must be in the back of his mind, knowing that he's. I think the back end of last season, people said how superb he was, which I think he was in some games. Like the Villarreal game was one of the best individual performances of any Liverpool player throughout the whole of last season. I thought he came in and was absolutely imperious that game, but that's the level that he needs to meet. A lot more often than he does. And I think that's kind of contributed towards a perception that he had a really strong end to last season. He was a little bit... He wasn't like that in every game, let's put it that way. And I know obviously he's had a disrupted start to this season with injury. And you can tell, he looks like he's a little bit short of match fitness and a bit unsure of himself with his confidence. So he's going to have to figure out a way, to get himself into the Liverpool team, and do pretty much what Wijnaldum does, as Adam was saying. I think the concern with him is that he does like to kind of cruise a little bit. He doesn't do things necessarily quite as sharply as Wijnaldum, as Henderson, as Lallana. He doesn't keep the ball moving quite as quickly sometimes. And if he's going to be a part of the Liverpool team regularly, he's going to have to start doing it.
But this is where I wonder about his belief in playing in the team. I think last season, Emre Can plays with a swagger. I've said it on here before. He plays like he knows he's the best player on the pitch. He walks, he runs around the pitch, he jogs when he comes on. Jogs like he's just like trotting on, like, this is easy, this is a nice, comfortable level for him. It's like it's now uncomfortable for him. It's like he's now thinking, I'm at this point where I know I can kick on and play better football. I want to be playing better football under Klopp. He's made me a better player already. And he's seen Wijnaldum come in and looks like he's done it. I'm almost just wondering, just thinking that Simon's just there about and Adam about Wijnaldum, plays this fast football better. It's whether Emre Can, and I'm not saying send them out on loan. If Emre Can could go and play a year for another Premier League team, 38 games, he'd come back into the Liverpool team a better player. He'd come back into he's had a full season under his belt. He's been asked to do the simple things. He's not been able to coast. I think
that's not an option, though, is it?
No, that's not an option, and this is where I think it's going to be a struggle for him now. And as a massive fan of him, I think it's going to be a big struggle of how he gets back into the team there. I don't think he knows now.
The Can thing's a bit like Sturridge, isn't it? At the end of the day, he's a good player, isn't he? He is a good player.
He's a really good player.
He's a really good player, so it's not a bad problem to have, is it? I mean,
but it's hard for that player.
Yeah, it's hard
he doesn't want to sit on the bench.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, we're sort of beginning to run a little bit out of time, so I'm going to sort of talk about the defence collectively. I'll go to Adam first on this one, really. I thought first half in particular, Moreno attacked brilliantly, kept the ball really, really well, was very, very smart. He's not great on the cross. He could get tighter. Though I think Zaha is a difficult player to play against in his defence. You know, we don't get to talk about how hard Liverpool are to play against, and then go, and all goals ever are errors. If you know what I mean. I mean, there are errors. People are making mistakes, but the point being is the opposition try to force you to make mistakes. That's their job, in the same way that it's Liverpool's job. So, you know, but he does struggle second half, is what I'm driving at here. He has a very, very good first half, but he does struggle, I thought, second 45.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the goal is he could definitely be tighter, but then if he gets tighter and gives away a penalty, then people are saying, why is he so tight? So it is a 6-1 really with
But the
him.
second half in general is not
and the
great
second
from
of,
him.
yeah, but I think that a lot of that is to do with the fact that we're attacking less, and he is a better attacking defender than a defensive defender, and I think everyone would acknowledge that. And I think that, you know, the criticism of him kind of being out of place and stuff is just a bit weird, because he's obviously doing what the manager's telling him to do. But I think that's why in the second half he's a little bit all at sea, because he's neither kind of part of a full out attack, nor is he kind of good enough to be, you know, pinned back in defence. And I think when he's asked to do that kind of halfway house, he struggles to know what his job is and what his responsibility is, really.
He struggles to know what his job is and what his responsibility is. I think the halfway house thing is a decent point. I think that if it was complete backs to the wall stuff, I've actually seen him play a defensive role. Like, for instance, there's a game where Lukaku plays on him in his first season, and he just deals with Lukaku really quite well. He gets stuck into the battle, and he has a good game against him. And I've got a bit of sympathy with that line, that idea that, you know, and maybe this is because you see the way in which he is on social media and you get the personality of him, that maybe he's as a footballer a lot happier if he's got it's 2 seconds. I'm either back here doing that or I'm up there doing that. Don't give me the halfway house stuff.
Yeah, possibly, but I think there's also quite a bit of positive reaffirmation going around with Moreno on this, because he wasn't as good in the second half, but as a team we weren't as good as in the second half. So there are lots of players on the pitch who weren't as good in the second half because we were phenomenal in the first half. He wasn't as capable of getting forward, but then most of the rest of the team weren't. I know I had a conversation with somebody on Twitter yesterday who was complaining about this Moreno hands behind your back defending. Well, James Milner did it last week, and there are plenty of other left backs who've done it recently in the Premiership.
Don't like it though, you know.
No, I know lots of people don't like it, but it's not just Alberto Moreno.
No, it's not just Alberto Moreno, but I just don't like it.
There are loads of lads.
It seems to be a trend thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like one starts doing it and then the other.
I think they're worried about them penalties. It's just
They're worried about the
penalties
handballs
being given, isn't it? They're worried about handballs.
There's plenty of handballs not being given, but there are loads of full backs who are currently doing the hands behind.
Well, I think the problem is as a full back, when he's going out for them crosses as a full back, if you're stood side on, your arm sticking out looks bad. If you're side on to him and you're tracking him and you're trying to stick a foot out and reach your arm as you're running, it's fine. But when he stands that man up, he's trying to be as big as possible. If his arms are down by his side or even slightly up as he jumps, he's worried that
they're worried about it, but you know, you need your arms to be able to balance.
Well, yeah. Well, you wonder though whether they've heard it, like, because the referees give briefings, don't they?
Yeah, maybe there's been a briefing.
Liverpool have listened to it intently, because Lovren does it, that goal where he against Arsenal, where he goes down on one knee, doesn't he, with his hands behind his back, which quite how he gets up from there, I don't know.
Klein, I thought played really well, Si.
Yeah.
Friend of the show.
I am just repeating myself again and again and again about Klein, but he you know, I think he was better than he normally is in terms of, you know, certainly in an
for instance,
sense.
it's very easy for him to have an assist if Mane turns the ball in from 7 yards out.
Exactly. His awareness there was fantastic.
It was brilliant awareness, wasn't it?
Yeah, because quite often you see the full-back in that position, he just smash it across the box, but he obviously picked him out.
I think you can compare and contrast that though with the game against United, where the game against United, I felt, you know, it came out to him I think on 2, possibly even 3 occasions, and he just flashes at it, and he does the thing that you're just saying there. So I do wonder whether or not, again, this is good coaching. He's been shown the videos, they've sat down, they've said, this is what you need to look to do here, mate. And he's a clever fella, he's a clever footballer, he takes it on board in actions.
I think we've seen a development in his awareness as well over the course of the last 12-18 months. He's become a better defender, I think, under Klopp. I think we could still offer it a bit more on the occasion, you know, going forward. I think that was the marker for me, you know, in terms of the level he should be aiming to try and play at more consistently. He's usually a 7 out of 10. I thought he was probably an 8.5 on Saturday. It's fair enough, I think.
That is fair enough, I think, isn't it, Jay?
Yeah, really good. Really good. He's one of them players that you just expect that from now. You'd expect him to just turn up. No, you know, it is no wonder he's linked with Barcelona.
The 2 centre-halves. Go on.
Magnificent. Genuinely magnificent. We look calm and composed, and it just comes back to a point we were saying earlier on about, you know, and I was trying to look for the stats on it in comparison to last year. I just think defensively, you know, you were saying we're not going to concede as many going back, we're better. It's the centre-halves. We feel like we've got a decent pairing, regardless, even if one of them gets injured and someone comes in. You know, even if Saka was to come back into the squad somehow, you'd still feel better with your centre-halves. They just feel like they know what they're doing. They know what the job is. Lovren makes that mistake. Lovren of a year and a half ago, his head goes after that. The fans get on his back, his head goes. As it was, he knows he goes up the other end and he scores. He just seems so much more comfortable in his own skin. Whether it's the keeper behind them, whether it's the pairing or whatever it is, they just feel so much better.
Yeah, I think Lovren, you know, I think it was a real sign of his character that, you know, to go up and score up the other end, you know, seconds after, you know, making the error that he did. I know, speaking to Klopp, I mean, you know, Klopp has been really impressed by his kind of leadership, you know, that he's shown around the club and inside the dressing room. I think the only question mark about him in terms of being the vice captain or even the captain is how, when he has a bad game, you know, he can't. It's what Neil was saying before about Henderson. He can't necessarily put that to one side and lead. You know, I think that, you know, that what he did on Saturday is kind of an indicator that he's, you know, overcoming those issues that he's had and maybe some self-doubts. I mean, maybe we should be discussing this, but he's obviously had quite a tough time, I think, at home over the last couple of years, and that could be playing a part. And you know, his focus sometimes, you don't know, do you? He seems
but
a lot more,
that mistake's a fluke.
Yeah,
that mistake's a fluke.
Yeah.
It's not bad. It's not, you know, switched off or not like that. It's genuinely just a fluke. Literally, that hits him anywhere on the foot. It runs away from the man or it runs straight to the keeper regardless. It's just a fluke that it literally goes straight up in the air.
I mean, sometimes I think his position could be a little bit better, you know, so he doesn't have to he doesn't do something like that. But again, I just think he's just kind of almost a symbol of how some of the players have like turned, you know, their attitudes
too close to each other for that moment. When Matip ducks for the header,
it's a bit of a mad header for Matip, you know.
He's too close to him. That's what it is. Matip shouldn't play that header because Lovren's too close to him. But he's probably not expecting when he looks that Lovren is stood so close to him as well.
Yeah, that did strike me as a bit of a mad header. Go on, mate.
But to combine the two things, the idea of Joel Matip and symbols, Joel Matip, the world is discovering Joel Matip. The media discovered Joel Matip in a big way at the weekend and suddenly realised you don't need to spend 40 million. And everyone's saying you don't need to spend 40 million on a defender. Joel Matip is pretty much a symbol of how Klopp's building this team. He's buying these lads that nobody was even thinking about as being major stars and go, that's what a major star looks like. Because I can get this lad, I can buy him in April, he won't cost me anything, it's wages, and he's going to be the best central defender you've seen in years. And he's absolutely magnificent at the moment. And it's also very weird seeing him interviewed afterwards because on the pitch he's this titanic guy who's somewhere in his mid-30s. See him interviewed, he's this 25-year-old lad who just looks like he's having a laugh and he's a bit shy, and he's emblematic of this team for me at the moment.
Yeah, I haven't got a lot to add, to be honest with you. I think the big thing with Lovren obviously is, you know, you can't get away from the mistake for the opener, and you know he isn't great on the second, but the character not only to score but also to put in the performance that he does for the rest of the game. And I think Jay's absolutely spot on. You know, a year and a half ago he's all over the show and everyone wants him subbed at half time, but he never, even as soon as the goal happens, he doesn't look like he's totally bottling it or anything like that. He's just straight back on it, and you know, you've got to give a lot of credit to that given how much abuse, frankly, he got, you know, during his first sort of 6 months or so at the club.
Okay. The goalkeeper played reasonably well, did all right, neat and tidy. Bit weird for the first one, but we'll let it pass because we haven't got any more time left to go through stuff. So huge thank you to Adam Smith, to Ian Salmon, to Simon Hughes, and to Jay McKenna, Andy Heaton for producing more and more stuff throughout the Anfield Wrap. On tour player this week, £5 a month, etc. You know we're all by now. theanfieldwrap.com/subscribe. We'll be back very, very soon indeed with more of this sort of thing. City talk later this week. Liverpool play Watford on Sunday, and Liverpool at the moment are the best team in the country. That's the Anfield Wrap.